Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. I became a Star Trek fan right about the late 80s thanks to reruns on Channel 13. This is back, Arsenio Hall would come on. Those of you that remember the old Arsenio Hall show, I know he did. He did a comeback not too long ago, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, his show was The Bomb. And so after his show on Channel 13, they would show reruns of the original Star Trek series from the 60s. And that's how I finally got a chance to see the episodes, because I had the coloring book as a kid and I knew of Star Trek, but I just had never seen an episode. So upon watching the episodes, which I saw the majority of them, I really became fascinated with the show, as cheesy as the special effects were. Great show, great themes, love it. And my favorite character is Mr. Spock. Now, how does this relate to what I want to talk about in this episode? Well, one thing I notice about Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock is that they're the yin and the yang, day and night. You have Captain Kirk, very emotional, of course. He is the captain of a ship, the USS Enterprise, has to make big decisions, and was faced with a lot of adversity and a lot of alien life forms threatening his crew. His job is to protect them at all costs and do what is best for the Federation of Planets, right? And then you have Mr. Spock, his first officer, who highly intelligent, half Vulcan, half human, which some people forget that he was actually half human, but logic preceded most of his human decisions. But the success of Captain Kirk could not be without Mr. Spock. Okay, they needed each other. All right. And Mr. Spock, I guess you could say, he really appreciated Captain Kirk. There was an admiration there for Captain Kirk, right? But when you look at it, the symbolism of what's going on is quite present, because Captain Kirk is the emotion, Mr. Spock is the logic. And right now, currently, in our state of the world, we have more Captain Kirks than Mr. Spocks. Okay? We have more Captain Kirk than Mr. Spock. More people are tapped into their emotions than their logic. Okay? They're oversensitive. If you say that you like pickles but you don't like tomatoes, people get offended. If you say that you like to write using your left hand instead of your right hand, there are people that get offended because they think that you're offending right-handed people. Like, this is the reactions from people. They're very caught up in their emotions. There's an imbalance of this going on today. People react very quickly. It's almost as if they react as fast as the internet. Remember, the internet, you type, tick, 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 press send. Tick, 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 press send. There's no processing of anything, okay? There's no process at first and then respond. Everything is instant, 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 right? It's almost as if when you hear people communicate, they communicate the way that they text. See, this is the downside of what social media and the internet has done. There's a lot of upside to it, but there is a downside to it. The social skills and that sort of thing. And this probably really came to prominence right about 2013, 2014, and it has really excelled to a high level. So the balance needs to be restored. Mr. Spock was the balance to Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk was the balance to Mr. Spock. There were some decisions that had to be made from emotion, and there were some decisions that had to be made out of logic. Mr. Spock had to pull emotion out of the situation and look at things logically. He was not one to have his feelings hurt. He just dealt with things using logic. It's quite simple, isn't it? And that's one of the things that I always found fascinating about him, because I, as a youngin, didn't quite get it. I didn't quite understand why or what is the benefit of not using emotion all the time. Not until later in my years, and I would say more so in the last 5 years, the benefit of utilizing logic and taking emotion out of a situation. That's, in a lot of cases, that's what you need to do when you're having a debate. Take your emotions out of it. That's what you need to do when you're hearing a difference in opinion. If someone's opinion differs from you, take your emotions out of it. Try to see it from their angle. Making decisions, you want to try your best to avoid those really intense emotional decisions, because sometimes it's a little irrational and can create more chaos for yourself than peace. So this is where logic comes in, the use of logic, and both are beneficial. One cannot be without the other. And right now in these times, there's more emotion than logic. Right now, people's emotions are fueled up. They're ready to tear some stuff up, tear this down and do this and do that. Okay, well, hang on a second. How logical of a decision is that? Look at all the pieces. Is it more destructive? Does it do more harm than good? Will it benefit the masses? The same way that Spock would think about it. He would process a situation to protect the crew. Is this a logical decision? Am I putting myself at risk? All of these factors would be accounted for. Along with this comes the understanding of what and how something should be done better, what improvements need to be made, not just in terms of the system that you're functioning in, but also in terms of how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. What can you do as an individual? And so when you look at it from that logical Mr. Spockism, you start to put together some pieces. Okay, your emotions got riled up. Okay, good. You're a human being. That's what's supposed to happen. But again, Captain Kirk cannot be without Mr. Spock. So after your emotions have gotten riled up, after you've gotten pissed off and you've let off that steam, you're angered, you're just frustrated, now you got to sit down and think, okay, let me bring in my logic and say, okay, what will be the best possible situation next? And how will this best serve myself, my family, people around me, and that sort of thing? Put together the pieces, as opposed to just going rampant, So these are just some things to consider going forward. Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock needed each other. They could not succeed without each other. You need your emotions as a human, but you also need logic.